Hello everybody, I'm back at Bishopwearmouth Cemetery. I'm off to visit one of my favourite headstones in the whole cemetery. It's got lots of history and it's events that happened back to nearly 770 years ago. Just to give you some idea where we are. There's the Southern Chapel, Cemetery Chapel. You can see lots of work going on there at the moment. It's a cold January day. So here we are. Now, the first person buried in this whole cemetery was buried on the 2nd of May 1856. Now, the person who this story is about was probably one of the first couple of hundred people to be buried here. I'll show you the headstone. So we have erected by Jane Hartford in memory of her beloved brother, Sergeant James McFaddyen of the Royal Artillery, a native of Carlisle who was engaged at, now these are three good names from the Crimean War, Sebastopol, Inkerman and Alma in the Crimea. Born May the 25th, 1827, and he died August the 16th, 1856. So this young sergeant in 1854 had been slightly wounded out in the Crimean War, but then on the 15th of November 1855 he was dangerously wounded. Now he then turns up in Sunderland the following year, so I'm guessing he was invalided out with the army. He might have had a pension, and his sister Jane had come from Carlisle. She lived in Sunderland down in Johnson Street, well it was Bishopwearmouth at the time, with her husband, who was John Hartford. They ran a marine dealer's store in the town. So I've always had the impression, or I'm speculating, that he was probably one of the last surviving relatives, so he came here to live with them and be either looked after or just somewhere to stay. Now, I never found out what injuries he received, but what had happened, the siege train he was involved with at the siege of Sebastopol took a direct hit, and there was a massive explosion, so he could have had some quite horrific injuries. Now, he died August the 16th, 1856 at Durham Lane, which isn't that far from South Johnson Street in the town, so possibly, well, in the burial records it gives the place of death is sometimes the place where they were lived when at the time they died. It doesn't always mean they died at Durham Lane, so he could have been living at Durham Lane, or that's the place he could have passed away on that particular street. It's down near the bottom of Chester Road now. So how old was he? 1827 to 56. 29-year-old young Carlisle soldier. I think it was over about 25,000 possibly British soldiers died in the Crimean War, and then there was many more who came back to this country with horrific injuries. It was a war that was a foretaste of the American Civil War, the Boer War, and the Great War, artillery, sieges, trenches, mud, disease, just an absolute horror. So Jane erected this particular stone, and it's quite a large stone. If you have a look on the side, it's quite thick. Wouldn't have been cheap, as a fitting memory to her beloved brother. Now also it mentions John Hartford, the beloved husband of the above Jane Hartford, who departed this life February the 15th, 1864, aged 44 years. And his epitaph is, "O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory?" So her husband passed away in 1864. Now, in the third quarter of 1864, she remarried James Petrie. So, third quarter, would that be July, August, September? So, literally within about 8-9 months maximum, she'd remarried, and the guy was a James Petrie, and with a new husband, they too ran a marine store dealers in the town. They eventually moved off to Little Turris, which I think was over McFaddyen. Now, Jane had a long life. She died in 1910, aged 90 years old, and she has a grand headstone along with her husband just a couple of 100 metres away. So she did have a long life, and it was quite a successful life, and she lived off independent means from after her second husband had passed away, James Petrie. I think he was a preacher at one of the chapels in the town, as well as doing his retail store. So, just a little bit of Crimean War history for a young sergeant. I'd like to see his death certificate one day just to find out, probably will do it one day just to find out what his cause of death was. It could have been something completely unrelated to the war, it could have been consumption or another infectious disease he'd picked up. But I would guess that after being dangerously wounded, he probably wasn't in the best of health to deal with most particular things that you could catch in the mid-1850s Great Britain and Ireland. So I'll just give you one last look. There it is. There's actually another 2 Crimean War veteran headstones in this particular cemetery. One is for a gunner, and another one is for an old soldier, which I'll probably do that story another time, because that's again a couple 100 metres away over there, and there's actually a picture of him, so I might put the picture on the thumbnail for that one. So there it is, Sergeant James McFaddyen of the Royal Artillery. So thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy that, please give it a like, and if you wish to, click on subscribe. It just shows you the type of history that you can find in any of these cemeteries across Sunderland, or anywhere really. There it is. A brave young man. So I will see you next time.